Hello friends, thank you for joining me once again for another episode of Before the Thunder. I know it's been a little bit since my last recording, but life has a tendency to get in the way. But I'm back, and I've done a little bit of digging around into one of the more neglected genres on Wattpad. Steampunk stories exist, they're just a little bit harder to find, and that's why this week I'm going to bring you a steampunk short story by Lee Stewart titled The Wrench Assistant. I have some bad news, I say, tapping on the copper oxidation chamber with one knuckle. The usual groans answer me. I hear wet flopping that is reminiscent of an octopus in a bowl as Humphrey shifts around in his tight metal prison. The oxidation chamber sits next to the furnace and boiler that supply our steam pressure, and through the converter, the electricity for the workshop. The man must be hot as a lobster in a boiling pot in there. I saw uniforms coming down the street. You have 1 minute to get in a comfortable position, I say, standing.
They're not coming here. They don't know I did it,
Humphrey calls, his voice nasal and thin through various copper and steel tubes. You could be right. The bell at the front door warbles an off-tune ditty. But unfortunately you're not. You have 30 seconds to find a comfortable position and to hope on your mother's good name that they didn't bother to bring a truth chimer. I hurry off, lifting my skirt to climb the steep stairs, and knowing perfectly well that his mother never had a good name. Not that I hold that against her. Esme the crab charmer has such an alluring ring to it. At the end of the hall, I peek through the crystal viewer. There is always a chance that it's not someone carrying a club or pistol, such as a street urchin trying to fob off a platinum pocket watch. But no such luck this time. On the other hand, it is the most handsome man I've ever seen. Dark tousled hair, gray-blue eyes, pencil-line mustache, broad shoulders, and more as my gaze moves downwards. Unfortunately, the silver triple sales badge he is holding up blocks most of the view. Graftonport City Police, you are asked to open promptly, he says. Mental checklist before opening promptly. Goggles off? Check. Clothes on? Check. No tools in hand that could be misconstrued as dangerous weapons? Check. Village idiot smile ready? Check. Hair brushed? Too late to worry about that. I open the door wide. Good morning, officers, I say. Can I help you? Good morning, miss. We have orders to find and bring Mr. Humphrey Strickton to the station. I believe he lives here? The handsome officer in front asks. I blink, taking in the group. Apart from the speaker, there is a commanding officer with deep creases on either side of his mouth, which do not come from smiling too often, and 3 junior officers. The junior officers are there in case they need extra brute force in order to remove my employer from the premises. They obviously do not know him. And they have a truth chimer in a leather case. I'll have to talk fast. This is Mr. Strickton's home. He is my employer, but I'm afraid he's not here. I haven't spoken to him in days. The commander motions and a junior officer snaps open the rectangular case right there on the doorstep. We would like to come in and inspect the house. We will have to ask you a few questions as well. May we? The handsome officer asks. Of course. Please, I say. The 5 police officers crowd into the narrow hallway, forming a line along the wall. I squeeze past them, still smiling and bobbing my head like Ma Bertha, who sells 3-day-old clams at the market. I might have batted my eyes at the handsome one. This is the hallway, I say, pointing. The kitchen is through that door, and the sitting room is there. One moment, the commander interrupts me to speak to the junior officer with the truth chimer. Calibrate to my voice for questions. Now, state your name. Annabelle, but I go by Nabel. The truth chimer bell rings with a cheerful ping, and all 3 buttons pop up. It is ready. The chimer is a thing of beauty, and I can't help myself for thinking so. Floral lattice casing in brass, precision-cut mechanical innards twirling and whirling harmoniously, silver-plated corners, and quite a bit of gold wiring give it airs of a music box fit for a king. There are 3 holes at the top for 3 buttons. Black obsidian for a lie, red garnet for uncertainty, and 3 golden sails for truth. A delicate calf stomach membrane unfolds from the back to form a half-circle fan to catch the speaker's voice. No one outside of a select few in the government knows how it works. Personally, I would be tempted to sell my eye teeth for a couple of minutes alone with its diagrams. Or better yet, Humphrey's eye teeth. The person who invents a trompe voix and sells it to the highest bidder could retire to an easy life of grandiose style. Papers. The handsome officer orders me to verify my first statement, and I finish my identification from the hall desk. My fingers brush his, and an electric jolt jumps between us. His eyes meet mine, slightly confused. He felt it too. Could it be? Ah, yes. The sparker baton I thought was dead and put in my pocket just electrocuted his hand through my hip and body. Miss Nabel, the commander continues, do you know where Mr. Strickton is? I swallow. Just answer the questions, he says, a tad impatient. But answering is tricky. Tell a lie and they would know. Bend the truth too much and they would know. Let slip the truth that my employer is downstairs, trapped inside his own invention, and they would arrest him, seize the house, strip the workshop, and throw him in a dank, deep, rat-infested cell, leaving me, most importantly, with no tools, no money, no job, and no home in a city particularly unfriendly to women who were not independently wealthy. The commander steps closer. Too close for my personal comfort, which is probably his intention. From here, the lines in his iron-cold face dredge up images of breaking bones, chains pulling in opposite directions, cat-o'-nine tails, moldy bread, and, oddly enough, the smell coming from the feeder orifice where Humphrey is stuck. Wherever this police officer spends his afternoons, I do not wish to go. I know where Mr. Strickton should be, I say. Where? He should be here in his workshop. The chimer rings after each answer, and up pops one button. So far it has given me 2 gold ones for telling the truth, which I find very encouraging. Show me. The commander was not a man who wasted words. I have no choice but to smile and bob my head vapidly. One false word would land me in the sewage running down the middle of the street outside, if not in the dungeon alongside Humphrey. 5 police officers follow me down the hall. I take my line of police officers to the trap door and down to the lower level workshop, splurging for the occasion by turning on the electric lights. I can only hope my employer doesn't sneeze or have to scratch any body parts. The tiniest noise made in the oxidation chamber is amplified by the copper sphere and feeder orifice. This is his workshop? How long since you've seen him? The commander asks. He sweeps his gaze over the large room and manages to frown even deeper than before. Nearly 4 days, I say. Goes the chimer. What happened exactly? He just disappeared, I say, watching the chimer from the corner of my eye. Each ping is accompanied by gold. So far. Did he say where he was going when he left? No. Has he tried to contact you since then? He hasn't been able to reach me if he's tried, I say, cringing. Gold. Technically, he can't reach me with his hand through the feeder orifice. The tube is too narrow. Do you know what this is? The commander shows me a diagram on a heavy sheet of paper. It looks like a vertical energy accelerometer. Have you seen it? We have one like this, but it's a 6er. That one is a 12er, and it looks pretty expensive. Are those double-knotted philodarts? I ask, moving towards the back wall. My last comment, a question, elicits a red button. The machine can't judge the truth of a question. In the meantime, the other policemen have spread out, opening drawers, lifting machine parts, inspecting loose steam-powered pistons and wires, flipping through notes and diagrams, and poking their noses in grungy, forgotten corners. "What is this strange beast, Miss Nabel?" asks the handsome officer, patting the side of the huge machine that Humphrey is stuck in. "That thing?" "Hard to say," I answer. No pings. The chimer is waiting for the commander to ask the questions. He promptly does. "What is the machine?" "Well, Mr. Strickton told me that it's an alloy purifier." Snorts of derision sound from several of the previously mentioned corners. Alloy purifiers, or ones that can actually separate metals and common alloys without costing more than the precious metals they extract, are myths. "Is that true?" "That's what he told me. Here's the accelerometer." I show the commander a half-wired 6-bolt accelerometer worth pocket change in the market for its spare parts. "Where do you think Mr. Strickton is now?" "I'm sure he's not far. He's certainly still in the area." "Gold. Look at the gold." "Can you be more specific? An address or an acquaintance?" "Could you please tell me what this is about?" I ask. Red. What is your position in Mr. Strickton's household?" "I'm wrench assistant under Master Wheelworker Strickton." This knocks them speechless. They all check the chimer for the gold button. They obviously thought I was a maid, and not a very tidy one at that. "But aren't you a girl?" the handsome one asks. I must have made an impression on him. "Women assistants cost less in salary." But you're a girl," he insists. I'll have to start lacing my bodice tighter to avoid any confusion in the future. "How can you hope to achieve master level?" Not the first time I've heard or asked myself that question. At one point, I even considered seducing Humphrey to get a promotion. Romantically speaking, he is not my type. Chubby around the middle, thinning hair, and a weak chin, although I would be willing to look past his outer flaws if he possessed any inner beauty. Humphrey has none, though, and in addition, the only woman who sparks his interest is the widow Bowdy. She is without a doubt the richest person in the city, more so than slick-handed Alfred and his entire network of thieves and thugs. Humphrey's adoration is quite one-sided. The widow would not deign to let him open her jars of preserves if he were the last man alive in the city. So while he pines, I roll up my sleeves and learn everything I can about mechanical engineering. "There's a first time for everything, right?" I answer. With a sniff, the commander dismisses my dreams for advancing my lot in life. After a second of reflection, he sends the handsome officer to search the rest of the house. "We will be confiscating all the material in Mr. Strickton's workshop for examination as evidence," the commander informs me. "Evidence for what?" I ask, watching with a distinct pang of disappointment as the godlike form of the handsome officer disappears up the stairs. "Of the theft of this 12-bolt double-knotted Philodart's vertical energy accelerometer." "I see. We will return this afternoon with the warrant. I assume you're not going anywhere?" "No." Gold. It must be true. Apparently, I'm not going anywhere. After they leave, I let Humphrey stew in his sweat and fear so I can watch the policemen through the spy scopes. The 3 junior officers find positions at the street corners, and the handsome one with his luscious, mouth-watering good look stands watch at the bakers in front. A sudden, overwhelming desire for fresh bread nearly sweeps me out the door before I can restrain myself. The time for dilly-dallying is over. I knew the moment would come when I have to actually get Humphrey out. As fun as it's been leaving him trapped in there, I can't risk them finding him and destroying the machine when they remove him themselves. Slick-handed Alfred wants that alloy purifier, and Humphrey has to deliver it, or both of us will be in his disfavor. So it's back to the workshop for me. All right, they're gone. I announce, fitting my new triple-lens goggles over my eyes. I pull an electric lamp close by and pedal the generator for a moment to get the light shining brightly. Humphrey mumbles pathetically. "I'm getting you out. They're confiscating everything," I tell him. During the 4 days since I discovered Humphrey stuck in his machine, I've basically determined how to remove him without cutting the expensive wiring or disconnecting the apex focalizer line, the root of the problem. Master wheelworker Strickton may be a genius for ideas, but for execution he has the finesse of a drunken sea chef after 5 days in a crusty port. The officer was right. The alloy purifier is a strange beast. Sitting on 4 stumpy iron legs, it has a round copper belly that Humphrey is squished into. 2 bulbous steel heads, one with the feeder orifice and the other with the metal renderer opening. Arms and tentacles are attached haphazardly to the belly and heads, and wires and tubes cover the whole surface. It's as if the creature's intestines and blood vessels are confused about which side is in and which is out. "Tell me again how you became caught in there," I say. I settle onto the floor and pick up where I left off, mapping and marking the puzzle of wires. I have heard the story 6 times already. It's so good. He mutters something that sounds rather insulting. "I'm simply trying to visualize how it happened," I explain. Actually, I can picture it pretty well. Humphrey crawling into the back half of the oxidation chamber while the front half hangs open. Him pulling on the apex focalizer line to hook it through the metal renderer, it causing the front half to close and connect in place. Him, blissfully ignorant that he has just locked the belly shut, continuing to attach the apex, thereby activating the focalizer. Now, once the focalizer is activated, the apex cannot be cut or disconnected. What Humphrey didn't stop to think about from inside is that the line is snug against the copper chamber, or belly. The mess of wires and tubes that are snaking around on the belly with it make it difficult, but not impossible, for me to create a free surface where I can cut through the chamber, performing an extremely weird cesarean section. To be honest though, I'm not sure I can get him free without slicing him up or removing any of his body parts. I chew on my lip for a moment, and the faint taste of grease fills my mouth. I'm gonna have to try it anyway. If I had really wanted to, I could have started cutting the oxidation chamber by the second day my boss was in there. If I had really wanted to. But by then, Humphrey had already given me the codes to the safe. My argument for the codes brooked no discussion. How can I buy food on the salary you haven't paid me, plus rubber bags for your unpleasant bathroom needs? And if you think I'm getting only 1 sack and cleaning it after your every use, you are delusional. After quite a bit of whining, wheedling, negotiating, threatening, and finally out-and-out crying, he broke down and gave me the codes. I've never eaten so well in my life. Not to mention how much I loved my brand spanking new, mind-bogglingly expensive goggles. My bodice bunches painfully under my spine and I change positions. Its previous owner had a generous shape, which means it's a bit large for me, but she did not need it where she was going, and I did. Now, where was I? This steel coil is paired with the reverse pull copper wire, and I can unhook them from the 12-bolt vertical energy accelerometer box hidden underneath the pistons. When I'm almost through disconnecting, labeling, untangling, and mapping the wires, Humphrey starts sobbing.
"He's going to kill me,"
he blubbers. "Probably," I reply. He, in this case, being slick-handed Alfred. "Unless the police cart you off first. You shouldn't have accepted the advance payment. You'll never be able to deliver now. Try to negotiate a replacement."
"And Widow Bowdy will hate me forever."
Widow Bowdy is not aware of your existence.
"Yes, she is. I told her I would give her the purifier as a token of my deep affection, and she accepted."
I stop working. "You did what?" He sniffs, making the beat snort metallically.
"I gave her the purifier. I wrote her a letter after she asked about it, saying she could have it the same morning before Alfred came to the shop with the money. How could I say no to him? He'll kill me."
I don't blame him. How did she know about the alloy purifier? I ask. Come to think of it, how did Alfred know? Wait, you got drunk at the Salty Seaman's Tavern and told the whole world about it, didn't you? More sobs. I start working again, impatient to free him, so I can fry his brains with a fully charged sparker baton. In a couple of hours, I'll be out on the street again. The iron drain cover rattles and slides with a screech across the floor. The streets might be safe for citizens, but the sewers are crawling with mafia. Johnny Boy appears from the small hole, angry. You've got 4 uniforms watching this place. I know. I keep working, as though I need this additional distraction. I'm here for the alloy purifier. My father wants it now, and it better be ready. It's not exactly ready, no. Well, I'm taking it anyway. You just said there are uniforms watching the house. I sigh. What of it? How do you plan on getting the machine out? We can take it out in pieces, through the tunnels, he says, eyeing the 9 by 6 foot monstrous metal contraption. And this man's father is the cleverest criminal mastermind Graftonport City has ever seen? Unfortunately, I say, it would take me approximately 36 hours to cut it up with the torch cutter, and no guarantee that I could ever get it back together. How many days is that? Too many. The police are confiscating the workshop in about 2 hours, I say. I shovel some more coal into the furnace and go to the desk to set up the torch cutter to warm up, thinking about Humphrey and his obsession with the Rishishima old widow. Johnny Boy, I need you to deliver a letter for me to the widow Bowdy. What, you think I run messages all day? This is, in truth, the only employment his father trusts him with. If we don't do something, the police will take the entire workshop. Then they will arrest Humphrey, and your father will be deprived definitively of having an alloy purifier. Oh. I scribble a few lines begging the widow to come, adding several sweet nothings about her glowing beauty and the wild stampeding of my, Humphrey's, heart. Would the words, eternal love slave bound to her bed by the chains of passion, be excessive? Probably. Forging Humphrey's signature, I thrust the letter in an envelope and hand it to Johnny Boy. Make sure it gets to her, or your father will be very unhappy. He insults my mother, my grandmother, and my unborn children, but I've learned to take these things in stride. I tell him Godspeed, and he makes for the drain hole without further ado. He tries to intimidate me with his glare as he disappears, pulling the iron cover in place with an ominous clang. I have other business to worry about. The torch cutter is hot. Humphrey, this might get uncomfortable, I say.
Why?
I have to cut through the oxidation chamber.
Just don't cut the apex,
he yells. The what? I ask, firing up the torch. I love this tool.
The apex focalizer line.
Which one is that? I ask. He thinks I'm an idiot. He tugs on it from the inside. Oh, all right. I'll set the candle next to it.
No. No candles. Use the electric lights. You have my permission.
Got it. Now, you'll want to move to the top of the chamber while I do this. I set the cutter flame to the copper. Within seconds, a coin-sized circle of metal is glowing and the cutter pierces the side. Humphrey screams. The belly shakes as he thrashes to escape. The screams continue, but they're more of the trapped, panicking animal sort than the tortured, burning man sort. So I keep cutting. I cut and he screams for nearly 2 hours. By the end, I'm able to extract a whimpering, sweat-soaked, fainting Humphrey. I hold him in my arms, rocking him gently while he mumbles and cries and tries to unkink his legs and back from their uncurled fetal position. Can you walk? You'll have to go through the tunnels, I say as the euphoria of my success fades and I realize how badly he stinks. He slurs. Come on, into the hole, I say, going over to lift the drain cover. No, not the darkness, Humphrey begs. It doesn't budge. I try a crowbar. This won't move. Did Johnny Boy lock this from the inside? Of all the dirty, low-life, short-sighted, scummy tricks, he locked us in here. Ma. The bell rings. The police! They're here! Get up the stairs to your room. Humphrey leans over and collapses on the floor, twitching. The bell rings, longer this time. There is nothing else for me to do. I rip off my bodice. The police officers pound on the front door. There's nowhere for my boss to hide in the workshop. My options are narrowed down to one desperate measure. Take off your clothes, I order Humphrey. He gapes at me like a dying eel in the clutches of a maniac fisherwoman. Take off your clothes now. I pull down my skirt, exposing my petticoat. He wiggles free of his pants and sweat-stained chemise, and the bell rings again. They're pounding, again, on the door. Good enough. Put these on, striped side out. Reversible bodice and skirt. Always useful. I grab the torch and set Humphrey's things in a broken chair on fire. Yelling, "Fire!" as loud as I can, I helped Humphrey lace the bodice and tie a rag around his greasy head. His chest, his chin. He has too much hair. Cover your mouth, I order. What? His question is cut short by shrill squeals and shrieks when I use the torch cutter flame, from a safe distance, to burn off the chest hair poking over the bodice. Then, with a pair of pliers, I yank out a few straggling whiskers on his chin and upper lip. For a woman, he's still pretty hairy, but it would have to pass. They've got a truth chimer, I warn as I head for the stairs. I pull a leather apron on to hide my missing clothes. Help! Fire! I scream. The commander and the handsome officer break in the front door and meet me at the trap in the hallway. There's a fire! I yell, waving towards the flames. They extinguish the fire in a matter of seconds, the commander's icy stare taking care of most of the flames. As the smoke clears, I see they haven't prepared the chimer yet. Could I introduce you to Mrs. Emily Strickton? Mr. Strickton's sister? Mrs. Strickton, the commander says, glancing with displeasure at the handsome officer who has posted his watch at the front entrance. Is this a pleasure visit? She came for news about her brother and has received quite a shock, I explained. The chimer pings in its case. Is that so? Would you fine gentlemen care for a cup of coffee? I ask. The truth chimer is taken out, its red button showing. The double doors to the back street are opened. Several junior officers come in to start removing material, and everyone declines my offer of coffee. State your name, please, the commander tells Humphrey. My employer stares up at him from the floor, the desperate, dying eel look returning. Let me help you, madam, the handsome officer offers, escorting Humphrey to a chair. Surprisingly, Humphrey makes a convincing woman. Small chin, skin naturally devoid of most facial hair, his chubbiness pressed into feminine curves by a bodice laced as tight as a corset, cheeks and bosom blushing from the torch cutter and pliers. A very ugly woman, but a woman nonetheless. Name? Asks the commander. Emily Strickton, Humphrey squeaks. Goes the chimer with 3 buttons. Papers? Oh, I have them, Humphrey falls over in a dead faint. For pity's sake, man, do we have to use the confounded box on every person we cross? The officer asks, fanning him. The doorbell rings and an imposing female voice calls. Mr. Strickton? Who is this? The commander asks. Is this a store shop or a workshop? I can't be sure. And it's a workshop. Double gold. I'm on a roll. No sooner do the junior officers go up to escort the person away, but they are coming down again, Widow Bowdy on their tails. The woman manages to fit her ample form and even more ample dress. She has enough satin ruffles to make skirts for an entire chorus line of can-can dancers at the local cabaret, through the trap door and strides over to the commander. Sir, she says, nodding and giving everyone a clear view of her tiny top hat that a pheasant has impaled itself on. Lady Bowdy? Silence. What is going on here? The question is addressed to me. In fact, all eyes turn to me expectantly, and even the chimer is listening. Well, I spent the afternoon mapping and disconnecting the wiring on the alloy purifier. I cut open the oxidation chamber. I removed an undesirable organism. And when you arrived, the cutter set some discarded clothes and a chair on fire, and you came down and put the fire out. Solid gold. My answer may or may not explain the state of my semi-dishabille. The commander sniffs. Quite a large hole. What was it? The hole? The organism. It's, Commander, my men will remove my property from the premises so you may continue your investigation, Widow Bowdy interrupts. She has been staring at Humphrey for a while and seems to have reached some conclusion. We have a warrant from Judge Charles Carter to confiscate the entire workshop. Ah, she says, and in that ah is the weight of 1,000 silver spoons. We will need to question you. Please state your name. Lady Bowdy. Nary a ruffle or bird feather shakes. What do you know of Strickland's whereabouts? You dare question me, Red? Yes. With what authority? Red. I have jurisdiction. No, I don't think you do. Gold. We are seeking a criminal, and the man you are seeking is not here. Gold. The woman is good. My property, however, is. She snaps at several servants lurking at the doors. Lady Bowdy, may I insist, if you need an amendment to put on the warrant from the judge to include my property, I am sure Cousin Charles will provide you with one. Gold. The commander opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. Widow Bowdy links her arm in his, and there ensues the strangest conversation I have ever heard, where she makes it clear in the friendliest terms that he can take everything his heart desires, except for the alloy purifier, and go. Nothing is said of jaunts to the harbor for a quick keel haul, no bashing of thumbs, knives protruding uncomfortably from his back, leeches being attached to his unmentionables, or any of the traditional threats I am accustomed to hearing. The commander says something that sounds like, Yes, you are quite right, of course, Lady Bowdy. After that, the policemen pack all the materials in sight and simply depart. Except the handsome officer. He steps over, cheeks flushed, and hands me a card with gold-embossed lettering. May I call? I grab the sparker baton on the desk behind me and take the card, careful to touch his fingers when I do. Tomorrow evening? I answer. The shock runs through him, leaving him misty-eyed and enchanted. He nods, mute, and hurries to catch up with his commander. An instant later, Johnny Boy unlocks and lifts the drain hole cover. I'll be fixing that lock as soon as he's gone again. He scowls at us. My father wants the machine, Nabel. He's paid money for it. And I have a letter of property, says Lady Bowdy. He'll have his machine if he wants it, I interrupt before a game of wills breaks out in the pillaged workshop. Humphrey Strickland might have disappeared, but I believe he discussed the matter of my promotion with his sister, Emily. So with her permission, I'll be taking over the workshop from now on, I announce. Just in case, I stroke the top of the torch cutter and smile at Humphrey. No objections are forthcoming. You? Asks Johnny Boy. But you're a girl. You're a recently promoted master wheel worker, my friend. And if your father wants to discuss business, I have the alloy purifier diagrams in my head. Widow Bowdy walks to the double doors of her coach. I take my leave of you then. Nabel, you and Emily will both drop by this evening, I trust, to rewire and weld the machine? Oh, and Emily, dear, plan on staying a while to keep me company. And wear the dress for me. And they all lived happily ever after. Or Probably not. I'm not too sure what the Widow Bowdy has in store for Emily, or Humphrey, at this point, but I imagine it's probably not going to be good. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to stop by the author's profile and let them know what you thought. Maybe give Miss Stewart a little encouragement to expand this universe, as I would love to read some more. That's all we've got this time. Thanks for listening.
I cannot get run again, my back's against the wall. I can never fall, I can never fall.